Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. If you're a senior living in the St. Louis area, you may well have some extra space in your house. That's the thing about St. Louis houses. They're often big. At the same time, younger people are in need of good housing options. And for the right rent reduction, they might be more than willing to do the kind of chores you'd love to outsource, from walking the dog to mowing the lawn. Put the two together and everybody wins. So how do you put them together? You just need someone willing to play matchmaker. And that's the idea behind a new St. Louis-based service. It's called Odd Couples Housing. And pre-pandemic, it was responsible for more than 20 successful pairings across the metro. Producer Emily Woodbury got to visit one of those odd couples in their home. It was one of the last days before social distancing orders hit, so she was not being unsafe as she went to visit. Let's go listen in on her visit with Amy Taylor and Yuki Hanashiro at home in University City on March 11th.
Hi.
Are you Amy?
I am.
Hi,
Nice
I'm
to
Emily.
meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Emily. Hope you didn't have any trouble finding it.
No, not at all.
Okay. Just come on in.
Thanks.
I'm Amy Taylor. I lived in Connecticut for many years, and when I was renovating a home in Connecticut, a good friend of mine, a retired psychiatrist, asked me if I wanted to stay at her home while my kitchen was being renovated. And I absolutely loved it. We had another roommate, Adam, and the three of us basically sort of formed kind of a family unit. I enjoyed it, and I think we all benefited from it because it's a type of social interaction. And it seems that these days that it is difficult to have social interaction with in a busy life. So when I moved to St. Louis, I specifically bought a home where I could see how I could have roommates.
I'm Yuki Hanashiro. I'm from Japan, and I came here as a grad student, and since 2018 August.
So you've had 2 months together now. How have the first few months been? How has that transition been?
It's been good. Yuki's a great roommate, and she studies a lot. So I have to say I don't see her all the time. When I lived in Connecticut and had that experience, we were with each other a little bit more and did more social things. But Yuki is very busy, which is a student's life. I'm not a student, and I remember that. But it's nice to have someone to come home, and when she comes home, it's nice to say hello and have a good day, and just to kind of have a sense that there's someone in the home. I like that.
I really like this house, and then Amy is very nice. And yeah, like she said, I often study in the library, so I don't see her a lot, but I still like her, and then I love her cats.
In general, I think that people need to be open-minded towards other persons and interested in getting to know another person and getting to know another culture, as in Yuki, and open to friendship. And it's a great way of experiencing less loneliness and meaningfulness in one's life. And also I do get paid $500 a month, and that does help with a mortgage. It's not really why I do it, but that does help.
How about you? What would you say to someone who is interested in doing something similar on your side of things?
I'm an international student, so I sometimes feel lonely, but this is good experience because living here, I'm living with people, and then I can meet cats, so I don't feel lonely, since I live here.
What's one thing that you've both learned from each other in the 2 months you've been living together?
Well, I could tell you what I would like. I'm eager for her to learn to do Japanese cooking.
Do you like to cook?
Yeah.
Do you have a specific dish in mind?
No, I don't. I don't know anything. I don't know much about it, but I'm eager to learn more about her culture.
I also want to learn how to cook American food because I just went to restaurant, and then I never cooked American food. So
What's something about American culture that you've learned from being in here?
Like not custom thing, like inside the decoration thing. I really like American like decoration and like European style. Like the wall is they have color. So in Japan we don't have any. Like most of walls are made of wood.
I didn't know that, Yuki. So most of the walls are wood?
Yeah.
Is there anything else I didn't ask you about that you'd like to add?
I would just say one other thing. I'm a psychiatrist, and one thing I see is that there's a lot of depression in the society at this moment. And one thing that I think is the cause is that there's lack of social connectedness now that there's more social media on our phones, and having the ability to live with other people, to say hello to an actual real person in the morning as opposed to Instagram friends. I think there's a lot to be said for having people in one's life. And that's one reason I do it.
I would really like to say it to international people. I really recommend that, like, they need not in dorm, like in actual house, to know American culture, and then it's also very close from school and cheaper. Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
And that was Amy Taylor and Yuki Hanashiro visiting with producer Emily Woodbury. And we do want to note Yuki was able to get a flight back to Japan within a few weeks of that conversation, and she is there at home now. And joining me today to talk about this new service is John Levis. He's an independent investment banker and consultant, and more importantly for this conversation, he is the co-founder of Odd Couples Housing. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us, Sarah.
And we're also joined by Brian Carpenter. He's director of Odd Couples Housing, and he's also a professor of psychological and brain sciences at Washington University. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, John.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
So, John, we have seniors with too much space. We have younger people who need space. What was your eureka moment in realizing you needed to play matchmaker for these two entities?
Well, it actually started because of my wife being an only child, and that she had a widowed mother who owned some properties in the city and wanted to know how I would feel about collecting rent. And I knew at the time that we needed a liquidity event, so we sold the buildings, and my mother-in-law moved into a condominium in Creve Coeur. And to make the matters more interesting, my mother-in-law was a twin, and her twin sister was living in Clayton in an apartment, and my wife was basically, caretaking both her mom and her aunt. Mm-hmm. And so we talked the aunt into buying a condominium in the same complex.
Makes a lot of sense. Get them under the same roof.
So they each bought a condominium. One was on the first floor, one was on the second floor. That was because my wife had a feeling that they didn't always get along. But I observed it for a couple of years, and they were both paying 2 lane assessments. They both had 2-bedroom, 2-bath condominiums. And so I said to my wife one night, they're both using 1 bedroom and 1 bath. Wouldn't it be a good idea, perhaps, if we put them together? And she said, "Oh, they'd never go together." I said, "Well, they started out that way, didn't they?"
They're twins.
So after many discussions, we decided to try it, and my mother-in-law moved down with her sister. And once I was able to standardize on the audio-visual controls so that they both had problems knocking themselves out of the proper mode when they tried to go to smart TV, et cetera. So I put nail polish on the controls, made them all the same. And then I did something that was, I thought would help the situation. The only thing they argued about was the temperature. So I went to Home Depot and bought a thermostat that was not real, and I put it on the wall under the other one and told one sister each had their own thermostat. And once they were able to move the dials up and down, there were no more arguments about temperatures. So
I mean, these are some ingenious twin counseling here. But at what point did you realize you needed to expand into intergenerational housing? That seems like a big leap.
What happened was a number of my friends said, geez, that's a really good idea. I have parents in the same condition. So we bought, my partner and I bought a practicum at Washington University at the Olin School, where they do a study on business practicality. Is this a good idea? Interview focus groups and that kind of thing. About halfway through the semester, they came back to us and said, look, your idea is a great one of combining people, but if you do it if you do it with the same generation and it doesn't work out, you're going to have a displaced person. How about us? And I said, who's us? And they said, how about graduate students? And I said, would you really be interested in living with a senior? Oh, absolutely. We'd like to live in another, in a nicer place. And we would really, I was miss my grandmother, et cetera, et cetera. So to use an Olin term, we pivoted and changed the model to where we focused on intergenerational housing. And because St. Louis has such a great housing stock, and there was a tendency of seniors wanting to age in place, and their adult children would worry about them being alone. And the way to satisfy that is to have somebody live with them. So we decided, this is the shift that we're going to make, and that was really the formation of Odd Couples.
So the grad students really suggested themselves. They knew this is something that would be appealing to them. Brian, how do you make sure then that you're not pairing, say, a loud partier kind of grad student with a quiet, neat-nick senior who's not going to be appreciative of having that under their roof?
Good question. And as you heard from the conversation between Amy and Yuki, Amy has cats, and you definitely wouldn't want to put somebody in Amy's household who didn't like cats or was allergic to cats. So we spent a fair amount of time developing a set of questions that would help us identify whether there were certain characteristics of the house or characteristics of the people that might make for a better or a worse match. And we're refining those questions as we get more and more matches to figure out how we can do a better job at finding people who are going to be compatible.
So have you had some issues in the past where maybe it wasn't the best match that was initially made?
John, do you want to tell that story about the international student?
We did one of the first matches. The parties will go unnamed, obviously, but a couple of friends of mine in the Central West End had a carriage house, and they were very excited about the program. And before we became aware of cultural differences potentially causing problems, we had a Chinese PhD student at Washington U move in with a couple that were actually friends of mine. And one night I overheard the lady of the house and my wife talking on the phone, and there was a comment about this woman is bugging me about my weight from the lady of the house, and she caught me eating a potato chip and suggested that I didn't need to do that, and I am not very happy about it. So we have that didn't work out so well, so we facilitated a change there, if you will.
Yes.
So we facilitated a change, but also it caused us to create a set of questions and comments about different cultures and do's and don'ts, if you will, for international students and for the homeowners that were having an international student, recognizing the fact that they're different cultures and different things that were pointed out to us. We actually surveyed homeowners and students about what cultural questions should be asked, and one of the things that came up was, listen, don't have them do one pair of socks, in the washing machine at 2:00 in the morning, please. I mean, so those were that list is now complete, and that is we provide that to every couple.
Okay, so you do a little coaching on the front end. We talked about some of the issues that come up, but you obviously also have some success stories. Our producer met Amy and Yuki, and that was going great. Brian, what do you see as sort of the things that these successful pairings have in common?
The successful pair, it's really very interesting. It's the successful pairings actually begin to share not only cultural ideas but activities, and we find with a number of couples that they comment that they're trying things they hadn't tried. Either the younger person is suggesting something, or the older person is back and forth. It's pretty much of a fair fight, if you will, because both sides are helping the other. And I think intergenerational living turns out to be a very positive thing. I can tell you that during this pandemic, those homeowners that we have, the couples that we have now, where the individual would have been living alone and has somebody younger living with them, and they has the ability to go out and do the grocery shopping, et cetera, really is fueling some real great testimonials from people about what's going on, as you would imagine. And quite frankly, I think I think the notion of aging in place, especially because homes tend to be the biggest asset that the senior has, is really important. And adult children of seniors really like the fact if mom or dad isn't living alone and they've got somebody living with them that they know and is there to sort of look over and make sure things are going smoothly.
They feel some sense of security knowing there's a younger person in the house. Brian, we heard Amy commenting on how, yes, she was getting some help with the mortgage through having Yuki there, but overall that wasn't what was most important to her. Is that unusual with the seniors who are opening up their homes in this way?
I don't think so at all. And as you can imagine, the people who are interested in something like Odd Couples, they're a self-selected group of folks who are open-minded and interested in meeting a new person and sharing some space. But I think Amy's comment is right on the money that this is a great opportunity to help people stay connected, stay engaged, learn new things, and avoid that isolation and loneliness that can be more common as people grow older, as their social networks shrink, and as they may have more physical limitations that make it harder for them to get out in the community.
So we're all now in this pandemic, and this obviously means people aren't moving into new apartments, people aren't seeking new pairings. But once this is all over, Brian, do you think we'll see some big growth for your service?
I do. I think John's pointed out several advantages to this situation already, and I think as people come to understand that this might be a way to help them stay in their home as long as possible and get the benefits of meeting a new friend, that I think that more younger people and older people will see this as an attractive option moving forward.
Well, Brian Carpenter, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Sarah.
And Brian is director of Odd Couples Housing. He's also a professor of psychological and brain sciences at Washington University. And John Levis, co-founder of Odd Couples Housing, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Sarah.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. That's 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.